I hope everybody had a good lunch or supper or midnight snack or whatever time zone it might be there. Hopefully nothing too heavy. I went to a meeting once and I had Indian food for lunch, and everybody had Indian for lunch, and the meeting was completely unproductive in the afternoon because we're all passed out at the table. So something light, hopefully we're all set. So my name is Pete Brown, and I'm a developer evangelist / XAML guy / gadget guy at Microsoft. And here's my colleague, Jeff.
Yeah, I'm Jeff Bertoft, and I'm an HTML5 evangelist here at Microsoft.
Right. So we both do two different technologies, but we essentially do the same job, I would say, right?
That's right, yeah. We reach out to our audience of developers who use those skill sets, and we help them understand how Microsoft plays in that space.
Right. So as part of that, I was going through some of the comments that we got from the morning sessions, which had quite a bit of HTML content because there were some really exciting things there that I wanted to make sure, when building the schedule that everybody got to see. We saw WebGL, which, I'm not an HTML guy. Sorry, the robot randomly activated over here. I'm not an HTML, so robot's coming later on, by the way. I'm not an HTML guy, but I thought the WebGL stuff was extremely cool because I think having that level of 3D in the browser and all the stuff David did and everything is a cool technology.
Yeah, and we tried to put those HTML sessions together so that if you wanted to catch most of the HTML content, you could do that at once. And we wanted to get the exciting stuff out of the way in the morning so we could move on to the less dynamic languages
Don't do it.
Don't do it.
We're going to move on to the real languages now for this afternoon. Things that compile and stuff like that. Right.
I guess if you need to, you can.
So we do a bit of HTML, we do a bit of XAML.
Yeah.
We'll even have a couple of other HTML demos as part of this. But some of the comments were like, well, I thought this was going to be all XAML, or I thought this was going to be all HTML. But quite frankly, that's not what I'm interested in seeing. What I like to see is, how can you use these different technologies from XAML and C# and Visual Basic? Where does C++ fit into the picture? It's one of the things we covered earlier today. Where do HTML and JavaScript fit in? And how can you take something like your website and move that over? And part of the reason the website stuff is in there is, the web app template, is as sort of a geek-oriented event where we have lots of things here that you've done in your own time, we do in our own time. That web app template stuff really started as a pet project of yours.
Did.
Kind of like on your own time, you're looking for, cool ways to bridge the gap there. And now it's become sort of a big thing internally. Yeah. It's not quite big enough yet where everybody else has taken ownership of it, right? But it's big enough that it's still interesting.
It'll be great for developers, for sure.
Yeah, so anyway, I just want to make sure everybody understood what we were doing there. We'll even have, believe it or not, some WPF demos this afternoon, so that'll be cool as well. All right. So the topic for this afternoon, for the next half hour here, or close to, is speech synthesis and media capture. And so we're going to talk about, how to get voice out of your PC, so you can have it talk to you. That's always kind of fun. I will talk very briefly just about how to get voice recognition, but we won't go through any demos of that, but I'll at least point folks the right direction for that. And then we're going to talk about webcam and microphone. And even though it's hot in here, luckily we are both still wearing pants, so we can stand up and, because the webcam is sort of forward on this, so we would have to stand up to do those. So we have some cool demos, both in XAML and in HTML for that.
So we're getting into this space now where we're talking about the sensors on the devices and things of that sort. First of all, when we're showing samples, sometimes it will be in HTML, sometimes in XAML. Generally, all of these can be done in either language. Yeah. And for an HTML5 perspective, this is the area where we get into our privileged code, the code that has access to all of these different APIs that we don't have access to on the web. Right. So this is a chance for us to get in there and code really to the device itself and take an opportunity to access all of those APIs that Windows gives you access to. Yep.
And for XAML and C# developers, this is kind of stuff that you've probably been exposed to in the past, and you'll be able to leverage this now in WinRT apps. So let's talk a little bit about speech synthesis here.
Yep.
There are a couple of different playback models for speech synthesis. The easiest thing that you can do in Windows is just send plain text. And plain text is going to be you just pass a string to the API, and the API is going to process that and do its very best to sound out the words and pronounce what you have typed in there. The other thing that you can do, if you have a very complex system or one where the recognition of the speech is really very important, like you need to have exact pronunciation, you need to be able to put emphasis on things, you need to have more control over the vocabulary and everything. There is something called SSML, which is the speech synthesis markup language. and that's also something that the speech APIs in WinRT support as well. And that's an XML, W3C standard. So if you go out there, you'll see pages and pages and pages of documentation on that. I don't know about you, but I when I go to the standard sites and try to parse that documentation, it just gives me a headache. But if you are in this space, you know what SSML is, so it's good that we support it.
Yes.
Either way, you have control over the voice that's used for playback. And there are multiple voices in the system, and you can pick the one that's most appropriate. You can also buy voices from third parties as well. We're going to cover speech synthesis in this unit, but speech recognition is also something that's very important. Now, speech recognition, excuse me, it's hard to recognize it if I can't pronounce it right. Speech recognition is available through Bing Speech Recognition Control, and those are all available. There's a whole API around that, so you have cloud-based speech recognition. Now, the good thing about that is you're using some significant power in the cloud to be able to parse that, and it's getting better all the time. So your app can get better at speech recognition without you having to make any changes on the client. So that's extremely convenient. It is in Windows Azure Data Marketplace, and it's free for the first 500,000 or so service calls for the month. Pricing after that, I don't get into pricing, so we'll have to see what that is like. All right. The speech synthesis in WinRT might be a little different from something that you've done in, say, Silverlight in the past. When I was doing speech synthesis in like WPF or Silverlight, it was fairly easy. You just it was like 3 lines of API code, but you couldn't control where anything was rendered to, and you didn't have flexibility to plug in different types of targets for where that renders to. So, for example, you would always render to the audio stream. But what if you actually want to render this to a file? Like, what if the stream is going to a file, or what if the stream is going to some other device? You want to be able to have the flexibility to control that. So the WinRT API deals more with streams so that you can, again, play to a file, play to a media element, or even stream it across a network. So again, very, very flexible there. Most of the stuff that we're going to do, and the example I show here, is going to have a media element, and that will give you the equivalent of what you've done before, but again, a little bit more setup because it does require a media element to do that. Oh, and cool transition time, sorry. Big fade, there we go. All right, so let's take a quick look at speech synthesis here. So if we look at the code here, I have a simple app here. Bonus points if you get the source of the quote on this. We did just pass that season, so hopefully you spent some time watching some TV on that. This is going to let me pick the voice that we're going to use for that speech synthesis, and then we have some text in there. And I was going to write something rude about Jeff, and then at the last minute I decided not to, because we have this new thing at Microsoft where you have to actively solicit peer feedback, and I was pretty sure the feedback would not be good if I wrote something rude about you there. All right, so let's go into the code for that before we run it and go up. The first thing that we're going to use is the speech synthesizer, and that speech synthesizer comes from the windows.media.speechsynthesis namespace. So that's where you're going to find all this stuff. The speech synthesizer is what's doing the majority of the work in this particular app. So I create a new speech synthesizer, and then I get the list of all the voices because I want to know what voices are installed in the machine. Now, you could do this inside a configuration page, or you can do this on the form, but somehow you're going to want to have some control over which voices show up. Then I get the current voice that's selected, and then I will go through and populate, I'll populate all the voices in there. And then when you go to speak this, I will take the current voice, and it's already been assigned to the speech synthesizer, and I will call this synthesized text to stream async, and I'm going to pass it the text. The stream that results from that, notice that this is an asynchronous method, so I'm going to await that. The stream that comes as a result from that is something that I'm going to pass to the media element. This media playback here is my media element that's in XAML on the form. So I set it to autoplay. I set the source of the stream to be what just came out of the speech synthesizer, and then I just tell it to play. And then the final thing is on the combo box that you'll see on the form here, if I change which item is selected on there, I just simply pass that information over to the synthesizer as to which voice I want to do. So a little bit more work than what we had in the previous stuff, but again, the flexibility here, being able to pass this over to any number of things, I think makes it worth it. So I'm going to run this right now, and this is where I'm going to have some audio here. So if we want to do that, let me just hit speak. So we have David as the voice. Did that come through? No, it didn't come through. It's a silent voice. Let me double check the audio here. Do you hear the ding? You hear the ding. All right, well, this might be a very short speech synthesis demo. Let's try it again. Let me try a different voice here. Let's say Hazel. Do we have Hazel? Can you do a Hazel impression for me? Can you say, I like Tapia? Wonders of technology here. So trust me, this typically works, just not here in the studio. It even worked last night, I believe, when we were doing the demo, so I'm not sure what's up here at this point. But I'm going to blame the guy that's behind the camera because it's not going to be my demo that did it. All right, so these are the three voices that were on there by default, David, Hazel, and Zira, and I'm disappointed you didn't do an impression for me.
Yeah, sorry.
Okay, and we'll make this code available so that you can definitely try this out on your own stuff later on.
Yeah.
All right, so let's get back to the slides here, and let's talk a bit about how to capture media. So when I say media, I'm talking about videos, I'm talking about images as well as microphone stuff. We're not going to do so much with video here, but we will do some things with still images. We've learned that these machines have had some funkiness done to them from previous things, and that made playing video of any sort of a challenging task. But what we're going to do is use this camera capture UI and the media capture as two different ways for us to capture this. Capture. The two different UIs or the two different approaches are very interesting. The camera capture UI uses the typical contract-based approach where it displays a pre-built UI that you can pick from and be able to start the recording, select the camera, all that stuff. It's really the simplest approach to integrating camera into your app. But that's not necessarily what you want to do all the time. I mean, there are times when you want to own that UI. You don't want to have just sort of that picker type approach. You really want to own the experience for recording, and you might want to display it on a different part. And we'll see a demo of yours that works like that. In that case, you use the media capture APIs, and that lets you control every pixel of the screen, and you can render the results out to different stuff. You can render the preview out to different elements on the screen, and again, you have full control over the UI in that case. Either way, the first thing that you need to do is you need to declare your intentions. Webcam and microphone, as you can imagine, has one or two privacy implications, right? So you want to make sure that the app, especially if you control the UI, you want to make sure that you've given permission to the app to be able to go through and actually do that, so we don't, secretly have all our little NSA type apps out here running and secretly recording our stuff. And actually, that did happen at a college. There was somebody had a desktop, and there was some app that was like in the background, like filming people and stuff. I remember this from about a year ago.
Yeah.
Like it was teachers or something like that. We don't want to do that. That's super creepy
Right.
and marginally illegal. So that's not what we're going to do here. We're going to make sure that we have that all declared. If you want to capture the video, it's almost identical to still image capture when you're using camera capture UI. They're basically the same process. You capture a video, capture an image. Display the results on the screen inside a media element or an image element, depending if you're doing video or you're doing a still image. And again, make sure that you do that. And we have our super cool transition there. So I'm going to go now and show the demo of camera capture UI. So let me run this first this time. So I'm going to capture a photo. Now, the interesting thing to know about these particular machines here is there are two webcams, right? So we have the webcam that's up here on the top, because we have these gigantic flat screen touch screens here. So we have the webcam here on the top, and then the laptop that's running it is over here off camera, and it has its own webcam. So you need to make sure that as part of your code that you are allowing the user to pick which camera they're using. In this case, that part of the UI will be handled for us automatically by the camera capture UI. Now, I've run this before on this machine, so it's automatically set to the top camera up here. You see my hand. Ooh, all right. I'm going to be a hand model. There you go. So that it's automatically set to that. And at the same time, I was not asked for permission to use the camera because I had already done that on this machine just earlier when we were double checking this. So if I go through here, I guess I'll stand up for a second. There's a view of nobody wants. There we go. Oh, that's no good. Let's retake that. Let's make this as scary as possible. There we are. And I just totally overloaded and redlined all your soundboards, I'm sure. All right, and now I can crop this. I have set the aspect ratio on here automatically. This would be a good photo for my dentist. He can check my teeth while he's here, right?
And this is all done through the API.
Well, this is all done through its through the camera capture API. We didn't have to write any of the code here, so I can say OK on that, and there I am. I can display it just as an image element.
Precious.
That's awesome. I think that's going to be my new avatar inside Microsoft.
Yes.
What do you think?
That's
All right.
good candidate.
The people behind the camera are groaning at me, so I don't think that was the best photo. Okay. All right, so that's camera capture UI. If I take a look at the code for that, again, really, really easy stuff. Most of the stuff that you see here is boilerplate, everything. But I create a camera capture UI dialog as the first step. I set the aspect ratio. Now, we can let it be any aspect ratio, but I wanted 16:9. So you notice when I tried to crop it, it always kept it at 16:9. Then I set the aspect ratio, then I call the capture file async to capture that to a file, and then I do a little bit of massaging to be a bitmap image, and then finally I go over here and set the source of our image that's on the form to be the the image that I just captured. Okay. And and there's also a capture video here, but as we mentioned, these machines have some funky video stuff going on, so I won't be doing that. But you can see the code itself is almost identical. All right. Now that's not the only way to capture stuff, and I'm just going to scroll down here just a little bit and skip right to this. Again, sometimes you need more control. Sometimes you need to be able to have a cool UI like this. And again, because I love to have my mug all over here, this is my wonderful photo that I did from the sample that's at my house. And this has the preview of the video or the preview of the still, and then the actual resulting still out of there. Now, I'm going to show this in a second, but you have a really cool demo, some part of Yeti Bowl, right?
I do. So
you're a one-app pony. That's what it is, right? Yeti Bowl,
like
all the things.
I like to build on things.
Yeti Bowl,
it's
all
familiar.
the things.
The audience has already seen it.
Yes.
So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to take the game I've already written, Yeti Bowl, and we're going to add a new feature to it using the camera. What I'm actually going to do, though, is I'm going to capture a stream of video from the camera and play the video and then grab screen shots from that video to use as stills. So when I look over my code here, very first thing that we have here is media capture. So I'm starting a new media capture, and then I'm initializing it. And then I'm adding it to the source of this image that I have called IMG Player, okay? Now, if we go back to my markup, what is that element? But it's a video element. So we're actually going to put a video element on the page, and then we're going to attach our image capture to be the source of that.
So that's an HTML5 video element.
It's an HTML5 video element. The same type of thing you would have if you were going to play back a video in the page itself. So I'm going to attach that right there and make that the source. The media capture is the source. Now I have a little bit of code that's going to go in there, and it's going to pull every 3 seconds. It's going to pull an image from that stream and paint it onto a canvas. And that's what we're going to have as our preview. And then at the end, I'll pull. I'm also going to store that off into an array. And then at the end, I'll pull them from the array and present them to the users. So what we're going to do is we're going to take pictures of you while you're playing games. So I used to have an Xbox game that would do that.
You get a creep factor, but okay, go
Yeah,
ahead.
it took pictures of you as you were playing the game. You know, you'd be jumping and you looked pretty dumb, and I thought, I probably look.
You put a time of day filter on that because, yeah, okay.
I figured you probably look pretty dumb playing any game. So here's a chance to check that out for Yeti Bowl. Now, I'm going to run this once and watch what happens. Okay, and an error. Now, why did I get an error? I didn't update my manifest, okay? So let's go ahead and stop that.
You say that like you meant to do that.
I meant to do that. So what I need to select is actually both for video, webcam, and microphone. Okay, so video, think it has both audio and picture. So we need to ask for authorization to use both of those. Otherwise, the webcam will never initiate. If I don't turn on microphone, it'll just never initiate.
And this is the same manifest settings that you do for XAML app, right?
Same manifest settings.
Exactly the same.
Yeah, exactly the same. So now I'm going to run it. And it's going to ask me for permission. I'm going to allow.
And you still got an error.
Still got an error. Well, let's try it again.
Did you mean to do that one too?
That one was an accident. Okay, so now I'm going to stand up here as I was playing a game, and it's going to take pictures of me as I'm playing the game, and I might be worried.
I see you. That's a pretty good
mad.
picture.
Every couple seconds, it's going to take one. And then whenever the game's over, it's going to collect those pictures and then present them back to me as the user so that I can see exactly what I was looking like when I played the game.
I see.
So it's a fun little extension to an HTML5 game that adds a little layer of interest utilizing the microphone and the webcam here.
And I think that was a cool way to add
Yeah.
something interesting, especially if you're playing like an app on the tablet. That camera is going to be directly in line with you
Exactly.
anyway, so that's really lots of fun. I mean, granted,
Here it's
these
a
are,
little awkward. I'm standing up, but
yeah. These are the giant tablets,
yeah.
right? That we're running. Actually, these are just touchscreen displays, but yes.
And that's the advantage of having privileged code, having code that has access to all those APIs. I can use the device to add features to the game that I couldn't do on the web.
Right. Now, in your code, you had basically hard-coded it to the second camera, I think, right? Or oh no, that's right. That's right. You did the sneaky thing where
Oh.
you disabled. That's right.
You're giving away all my secrets.
Well,
yes.
that's what this is about, right?
That's right.
Because you're just a JavaScript programmer, you went and disabled the
I did.
disabled the webcam.
I don't have enough IT skills to determine exactly how to turn off or to choose a default camera.
Right.
So in this case, and you can actually build a control that lets you switch cameras. So that would have been an option I could have included.
So I have some code here, right?
Okay.
If we want to switch to that for a second, I have some code here that's in C#. It would be almost identical code
Yes.
in JavaScript.
Yep.
As much as I give you a hard time about JavaScript, it's really
It's
when
all
you get to the WinRT stuff, it's all the same. So what I'm doing in this particular bit of code here is I'm building a list of devices. Excuse me. And I'm calling this device information class.findAllAsync, and I'm passing in the video captured device class. Now, this particular bit of code, this findAllAsync from device information, is going to be something you use time and time again for Bluetooth, for USB, for everything else.
Yeah.
Anytime you want to enumerate the different devices, you're going to use something off the device information class. And then for each of the video devices that come back, I put them in that combo box. And then I do the same thing for audio devices, because in theory this would capture audio as well. And then once that stuff is put into the combo box, the user is going to pick that. And then let's see if I go down to capture video. Let me do, capture video. Click here. Once they have picked that particular video device, they start going and they record the video, and then they'll be able to save it to a file. And I think what's actually missing here is the MP4 codec on these, because I'm storing this as MP4. So we'll see when I run this that it will run. Yes, I can use my webcam and microphone. So do I want to use the integrated camera on this? No. What I want to use is what's listed as PC camera here, which that's this separate thing. So if I just say, hey, everybody, hey, and then I hit stop, and then just says, unsupported video type or invalid file path, which is, again, something was done to these machines afterwards, because by default on your PCs, it's just going to work. So again, this is the preview. It's live the whole time. And then I could do the same thing with starting audio capture and stopping the audio capture. So again, very, very similar. It's the same type of thing you did with Yeti Bowl, except I didn't pull out individual frames to do anything special with that. So very cool stuff there. And so the final thing, in summary here, like what we wanted to make sure that you saw is that, WinRT apps, whether they're HTML, JavaScript, whatever you want to write them in, XAML and C# or C++, all have great access to the built-in devices for webcam, microphone, great media playback, as well as great, well, if you don't delete the codec, great media playback, definitely great media recording. There are two ways to capture media. If you don't want control over the UI, then just use the built-in camera capture UI.
Yep.
If you do want control over that, you can write some more code to go through and do the device picker and all that type of stuff, but just use the the media capture APIs. And then finally, Windows Store apps can use speech synthesis, which I think is an underused but very useful feature that you can have in apps. I think one of the 3D printing apps or something that I saw actually use speech synthesis so that when it started up, it said something to you like starting up printer or something.
Yeah.
The problem is these aren't robotic enough for me. I want sort of the the old Joshua
sound
voice
like a
from War
computer?
Games. I really that's what I want on this, right? So speaking of 3D printing.
Yes.
Like that segue? Was that a good segue?
That was
a
great.
good segue.
That's great.
So speaking of 3D printing, that's going to be the next thing that we talk about here in just about five or so minutes, where we're going to build on some of the things that we've been talking about here, especially the enumeration of devices and stuff. And we're going to bring in Chris Iverson from the 3D printing team. He's going to go over and sit in your seat and talk all about 3D printing and demonstrate some really cool hardware.
Yes.
So hope to see you in just about 5 minutes. Thank you.
Thanks.